When your values lead, your vision follows. When your values fade, confusion fills the space. Value-centric leadership isn't just a philosophy. Oh no, it's the anchor that keeps our decisions, our teams, and our integrity steady when the waters get rough. Come on, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Transformation Station. I'm your host, Adrienne Benton, and you're here at the podcast where we dive into deep conversations that shape who we are and how we lead. Each episode, we unpack ideas that inspire lasting change. So come on, buckle in, lean in, let's grow together because today we're talking about value-centric leadership. Now, I'm super excited about our guest today. His name is Barry. Let me tell you a little bit about Barry Wolfe. Barry Wolfe is an HR author and consultant focused on implementing people systems that connect people to value creation. His goal is to help companies succeed by helping their people succeed. Transformation Station, come on, let's welcome Barry. We're so glad that you're here with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian. I'm very excited to be with you as well and your listeners.
Absolutely. So listen, Barry, I've noticed that the strongest leaders don't chase trends, they stand on truth. They make decisions that reflect who they are and what they believe in, even when it's costly or uncomfortable. So I want to start with this question. What does value-centric leadership mean to you, right? And how is it different from other leadership approaches?
Well, um, value-centric leadership, basically the idea is to help connect employees to the value the organization exists to create.
Okay.
Um, and I came up with this approach after spending about 30 some years as a senior HR guy before I left and started my own consulting business, where we were always, wherever I was working at some point or other, we're taking the traditional solutions to leading people, which tend to center around like theories of psychology, basically things
Okay.
like personality tests and that. And we always would take the view that we have our specific mold of who's our ideal person. And so we have to apply that to different people. And we use these tests and techniques and so forth. And that's how we figure out who our right people are. And then we're going to get whatever it is we're actually looking for. Well, two things I noticed about those over the years, over many years, wherever I worked and these kinds of approaches are being applied. First of all, they don't really apply. They don't really identify these things in people to the extent that they're marketed to. And the other thing is even worse is
Mm-hmm.
that we really don't help people become successful in the sense that we operate according to this whole approach operates according to a view that if we find somebody with this background and these traits and so forth, we're going to get we're going to get the results we're looking for. Well, the problem is that all everybody focuses on are those traits and that the psychological makeup theories, and we don't really help people understand, well, what are the results that the business is actually looking for from as a if somebody has these or don't, what are we supposed to get out of them?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the biggest reasons I discovered over the years of just being in senior leadership and reflecting on the challenges that we were running into. It's one of the biggest reasons one of the biggest reasons I discovered why this thing doesn't work, or why we get so many people who don't succeed in their roles. That and for all the training and so forth we do, and but it can't ever matter if people don't really know what they're there to do. And there's some data around this, by the way, that reflected my own experience in this. In 2024, for example, the Gallup organization
Mm-hmm.
reported in its what it does every year, its annual state of the workforce surveys, where I believe they interview something like about 1 million employees in various companies around the world. One of their findings that they reported in 2024 was that 45% of employees strongly agree with the statement, "I know what is expected of me in my job," which means, of course, that 55% of the workforce really doesn't know what their employers want out of them. So
Mercy.
even if if all the tests and so forth were all true and they were all real and they all work, how can
Mhm.
any of it make any difference if over half your workforce doesn't really know what the heck you want out of them?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that was really the impetus towards my wanting to create this approach I call value-centric leadership. Value-centric leadership. So
No, this is wonderful. Fantastic. So here in Transformation Station, we always like to give our viewers and our listeners an opportunity to stop and to do some reflection. And so as we continue to move forward in this conversation to all our viewers and listeners right now, we want to invite you to dig deep and to really take hold of what Barry is sharing with us and apply it to your leadership and, kind of compare, contrast, and see where there's some of this that will be fruitful for you to use to be able to grow and enhance your leadership. So I want to ask you this, right, Barry? Like, so how is value-centric leadership different from other leadership approaches?
one of the traditional ways we tend to manage people is according to the things we want them to do.
Okay.
And so we break it all down to the job description, for example, where you do these things, you have these duties now. Well, the thing about it is, having been, over the years, always been in the room when it's the discussions about who gets raises and who gets a promotion and who gets a performance improvement plan, who has to get fired, things like that.
Mhm.
What really centers around all those decisions, those questions, is is not about what people do; it's about what they deliver.
Mm.
And so one of the things that is I consider one of the foundational approaches to features of value-centric leadership is the recognition that if we want to talk about helping employees create value or connecting them to value creation, value is a noun, it's not a verb. And we look at our job descriptions and it's all about what we do, it's all verbs. Well, nobody buys a verb.
Okay.
Nobody
Mm.
at all. Everybody buys a noun.
Mhm.
So it's really about, first of all, understanding what are what are the nouns, if you will, or what is the value that an organization exists to create. And we talk about that not in terms of aspirational, high soaring, rhetoric kinds of things, or
Mm.
but we talk about in terms of the nouns and noun phrases. What does your organization put in somebody's hand? What does it leave on the desk or on the floor when it goes home, when people go home at night? What do you
Mm.
change out in the wider world? Those kinds of things. And then from there, we work down through an organization to figure out what does each person deliver that helps contribute to that value creation. So
Mm.
it's really fundamentally uh, a focus on before we get into things like the verbs, the what people do. It's
Mm.
really about getting managers and senior leaders to start the conversation or start the conceiving of the business and their people in terms of those nouns that they're there to deliver.
Mm.
So that's
I
the
love.
that's the fundamental thing.
Yeah, I heard you say something a moment ago that, and I may need you to help me fill back in the words because I'm kind of forgetting a little bit, but you said something to the effect of, um, I'm going to paraphrase, before you really focus on like the metrics, you should be focusing on the people and the value that they bring. Am I paraphrasing correctly
Well,
or?
the before the metrics, certainly, it really just has to really before you focus on what people do,
Okay.
on what you really got to focus on. Well, what does this what are we here as an organization to deliver? What are the
Mm.
and then what do people deliver that
Mm.
support that? And that's really where it's got to start. It's not to say, of course, things like qualifications or skills or abilities don't matter. For
Mhm.
example, I could never plug in as a biologist. Okay, it's not. I I had a course on it in college, but that doesn't mean I'm qualified to do that. So it doesn't mean those things don't matter. It's just that
Mhm.
those considerations are after looking at more foundational things in terms of, again, what's the organization here to deliver, and what do people deliver that contribute to that.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, right? Here's the next question. How can leaders ensure their personal values align with the organization's values, and what happens when they don't?
Well, I think the biggest thing the best way to think about this in terms of aligning with organizational values is doing the homework up front in terms of what's the organization really all about before you join. Knowing what is it you want out of a business,
Mhm.
and um, and does that employer provide that or not? And I also would point out, I guess, to a certain extent, and I hate to sound kind of cynical about this, but it's just the result of having been around this sort of stuff for a long time.
Mhm.
There's oftentimes the president of the company, the C-suite guys, and I've been one of those, and they can all make it sound like, it's all up here. The view from Mount Olympus is all the same thing
Mhm.
out there, and it's all glorious and everything else. Well, then you get to, the sites on the other side of the country, and you talk to the folks on the back shifts and so forth, and it's not that world at all. And so often what happens, the reality is that when we talk about, we think about values in the context of, like, say, a corporate culture,
Mhm.
reflecting it or not. I know this is heretical to a lot of people, so some people, you might get some hate mail from this statement, so sorry about that. But
That's all right.
um,
Bring it. Bring it.
but what I have found, in all sincerity, is that an organization's culture is, for better or worse, what people's direct leaders decide it's going to be, for better or worse. So there's always that reality, and I think that is, and one of the reasons that it's interesting you bring this up in this context. So if we think about it in terms of what does value-centric leadership do
Mhm.
to address that kind of a concern, and I think that where it's most effective in this regard is that it's the concern really is, how do we help people become successful here, and we just
Mhm.
sort of start from there. Not just so much even, because that's really the point about when we talk about connecting people to value creation. Because I've been in the room. I mean, it's when people deliver, that's when they get raises, that's when they get promotions, that's when they get opportunities, and when they
Right.
don't deliver is when they get performance improvement plans and separation agreements. Uh,
Right.
so
Right.
so it's really a question of the real challenge for leadership, I think, has to be, how do you help your people help you succeed?
Hmm.
And which has to start back to, well, getting yourself clear on what matters to
Mhm.
you in terms of what you're really here to deliver, and being clear on that with people and helping them understand where they contribute. I really believe very, very much that if we can focus on that,
Mhm.
we can, I don't want to say sidestep questions of values, because that's not it. Nobody wants to work any part of an organization where it's just, where those two things don't align. But I
Right.
do think that one of the best ways we can, I'll say, change the conversation to make experiencing an organization most meaningful for the most people, is when we
Mhm.
really do start thinking about, how do I help somebody succeed here? Because if we're serious about doing that, I think we can tend to come to a lot of, we can see that takes a lot of values that, a lot of really good people, a lot of people should value. So
Absolutely. And as you were talking, I was thinking about this concept right here, right? Which is know your own values first. You can't align with something until you're clear on what you stand for. And I heard you speak about that. I had a boss previously, a supervisor previously. She would always say a phrase to us called "call your own tilt," and she would say, "I really need you to understand who you are and what you stand for, and I need you to stand 10 toes on it. Like, have
yeah,
integrity, so that way, when you're interacting with me, I know that I can trust what you say. If you don't know what you stand for, then you're going to be all over the place, and this work relationship is not going to go very well." So,
true.
when we talk about how do we align our personal values, I agree with you 100%, Barry, that we got to know our own values first. I thought about this as you were talking as well. Study the organization's stated and lived values, right? Look beyond the mission statement or the posters on the wall. What's the history here? What's the mission? What have they been working for? What are the goals? How do all these things align? That way, then you can really know, how are their values practiced? Does that align with yours, right? How do people make decisions? How do they define success? I mean, as a leader, that one basic question, I've watched people struggle and fight and do all these things to be successful. But what they were trying to do was not in alignment with how the organization or the corporation
Yeah.
defines success.
Yes.
it was really challenging. I
Yeah,
don't
it
know,
is.
what are some of your thoughts?
No, it's very true. And again, one of the difficult things about that is you get two sides of that aspect when we think about, the stated values, the lived values. Um, I've been part of in more than one organization where we developed core values and so forth. You talk about promoting those. And one of the problems is you can get to the ones that everybody's willing to sign on to, I guess, or put up in front of
Mm,
everybody, and they go on the wall, and it's really, really nice. But so often this is one of the difficult things, especially for an organization, is we can state what we think are our values, but until they're really tested, I mean, nobody really knows if they're actually your values. And I'm sorry to say this, but I've
mhm,
been part of organizations where we talk about integrity, and
mhm,
yeah, it means a lot to everybody until it gets to that guy who really brings in a lot of money, is a really super successful sales guy, and
mhm,
he's doing some stuff that really, if it was any other mortal, it would get him fired.
mhm,
But we're not going to do that with that guy because, well, brings in the money. So we always have those challenges when it comes to things like lived values. It's just very often, I guess it's the same thing with individuals as well, and until they're really put to the test, we don't really know what they are to a certain extent.
yes,
So yeah. So that's uh but in any case, the other part of that is that we can the sometimes they can degenerate. What's the stated ones can
mm,
it can all just sort of turn into brickbats. If you've got somebody who's not popular with a certain manager, that manager might say, well, you're not living up to the core values, and it's like, well, okay,
mm,
we just here to use those values or those aspirations just to knock each other around, or are we going to try to make something positive come out of that? So they can always get kind of challenging. I mean, we do our best, and we're not um hey, we're all just people, I guess, even executives, and trying to
mm,
figure these things out as
yeah,
best we can. But it is a continual ongoing challenge. Again,
mhm.
until we've really had to put those to the test, we don't know if they really are the values or not.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, this is a really great conversation. And again, to those of you who are listening and watching right now, we want to ask you, right? When we're talking about value alignment, how do you know when you are aligning with your organization's value? What are some of the best practices that you have been able to do over the years? We want to invite you to go ahead in the comment section and tell us right now. Because the other part of the question was, what happens when our values don't align? And this is one that I've seen a million times, right? The internal conflict. We end up feeling torn because between our integrity and the job, leading to burnout and disengagement. I've seen that
Oh, yeah.
over and over again, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Lita, if you're watching and listening to this right now, if this is you, you're having that internal conflict, you want to do some assessment right now and find out if this is an organization, a job that you should stay at. And what are the best ways for you to protect your peace while you're there, while staying true to who you are? Barry, I've also seen this one, decision paralysis. When the values don't align, leaders, we tend to hesitate to act because we are unsure which voice to honor, personal, that internal, right? Or the organizational. And that right there can really be a dilemma
Oh, yeah.
for many
Yeah.
leaders,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. When it's funny. I not long ago I read a really interesting book that had one part of it was studying SS officers in World War II in Poland, and they had to, order men to, basically, perform atrocities on a daily basis. And they would come back to barracks at night or to their quarters, and they would just break down.
Hmm.
And they would, they knew what they were doing was abominable. But
Mm,
yet they would, the next morning, they would,
get right
get
back
dressed and
at
go back out and do it again. And there was and there was some psychologists trying to do some follow up with this and understand why, if it was so bad, why would you do it?
Mhm,
And part of it was overwhelmingly, actually, I guess the ethos became just that's what was expected. That's
Mm.
what the group expect me to do, and I'm part of that. So that's what I have to do. So it can be very, very powerful, and it can really, hopefully none of us. Well, I don't think any of us are. Most of your listeners probably are facing that kind of dilemma,
Mhm.
but it is an example of how how really, really how real that issue is, and how difficult it can make.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. 1000%. I think right now many of our viewers may not be in that physical setting, but in the context of the different cultures and the organizations in which we work, many are literally in situations like that every single day.
yes.
I want to ask you this question, right? Can you share an example of a tough decision you had to make as a leader where leaning on your core values made all the difference?
Well, I I had to once a president of a company I was working for was making certain decisions with some people that not only were not ethical, but actually could expose the organization to some potential legal challenges. And I had to go in and talk to the boss one day, and just after thinking about this for a long time, knowing that I could get fired for this. There was, we talk about whistleblower protections and that. Well, they only apply to certain things, and they don't apply to other things.
Mm,
And so it's just not as good thing we have those laws on the
it's
books, but informing or being able to rely on those aren't as universal, I guess, as maybe some people would like. But in any event, I couldn't tell my wife about this one day, but I had to, but I had to walk in and just say, listen, this is a stick of dynamite, and this goes
mm,
off, it's going to blow up the whole place.
mhm,
And had to have that conversation with him, knowing it wasn't going to be popular, and knowing
mhm.
that he could fire me for it. He didn't have to listen to it. And, so uh, it was actually probably a couple of months of
Mm,
mulling that over,
mhm,
but
mhm.
fortunately, I didn't get fired for it. So, um,
Yeah. No, no, fortunately, I'm glad you were able to see that through. And to our audience, we want to invite you to share with us what's an example of a tough decision, a time when you had to make a tough decision, right? And maybe you're in that place right now. And if you are, both Barry and I want to invite you, don't quit. Do not walk back on your core values. So, Barry, let me ask you this question. What are some practical ways that leaders can embed values into daily operations so that they're not just words on a wall but actually a lived experience?
well, yeah, I think that the first thing is to be, as we mentioned, to be the kind of person that knows what you're there to deliver.
Mm,
Where is it? What's the contribution you're there to make?
mhm,
And which, of course, in a leadership role, the further you go, that list can get a little longer. Um,
mhm,
but to know what that is you're there for, and um, and what you believe is the right way to get that done. Um, and it's not always as I'm kind of a fan sometimes of a guy named Ken Blanchard, who talked about something called situational leadership, which I think makes a lot of sense to the extent that we look at what kind of leader, what kind of way we're going to lead is dependent in certain extent
mhm,
on the capacity of the group we're there to lead. So you may have, and of course, certain situations where, you know, you may normally prefer to really try to be pretty collaborative with folks and figure out, give people opportunities to contribute to what's the best way we should accomplish something. Do we do first, second, or third? And that's all great.
mhm,
Unless you've got, say, in a production context, you've got, you know, you're late on some parts that have to get out on Friday. Well, in that case, you got to learn that you got to be willing to accept that that's what's got to take precedence. And so, maybe you're going to give the orders for the next week or so, and that's the way
mhm,
it's got to be. But understanding, where in yourself, which of those are really going to be important under what contexts, I think are going to be really important to guide yourself in those kind of crunch situations where maybe you don't have a lot of time to weigh the options. So.
no. I love that. I love that. And so, a question here is, what are some of the practical ways that we can embed values into daily operations? And thank you for giving us an amazing illustration. I was thinking about this as you were talking also on the, on the practical side. We can start every decision with a values lens, right? Before launching a new initiative, hiring or policy change, we can ask, how does this reflect our core values? And Barry, I think this is a question that we can apply to the organization as well as to our personal. How does this reflect my core value? How does this reflect the corporate core value? I also thought about this one, right? Integrate values into onboarding and training. Introduce new team members to the organization's values with real life examples, not just a printed list. Leaders, we want to have a culture of value-centered leadership, not just one or two individuals within the team, but a culture so that it's infectious and can spread. So, Barry, as we turn the corner here on this amazing conversation, I want to ask you this final question. Is there a single most important consideration to implementing value-centric leadership? Talk to us about, I'm a leader, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm sold. I'm like, okay, Barry is telling the truth here. But now how do I do it? What's important?
The place you start is by asking yourself, what is the value this organization exists to create? That if it's my department, it's the organization overall. And I will tell you, it's a simple thing. It's a simple question, but the answer is very difficult to. I work with companies implementing this, and as we get through answering that for the president of the business, can be. The shortest we ever did was 6 90-minute sessions. Just kind of going back and forth on some of these and drilling it into what really, identifying clearly those results that the organization exists to create. And it's the kinds of things, honestly, business presidents hate to do, which is shut the door, and think a long time about things that are really hard. Doesn't mean because they're stupid. It's just because they don't have a lot of bandwidth during the day, So that's the first thing is what's the value that we're here to create, and what are the results we produce by which we know we're creating them. So that's where it has to start.
I love that. So I'm going to ask you one more, and that is, what final words would you like to share with our community when it comes to value-centric leadership? Talk to us, Barry. What would you like to share with us?
This is a result of, as I mentioned, a lot of years in senior leadership roles in business, and trying to address issues of building creating the right kind of workforce, identifying the people that are going to be successful, things like that, and helping, putting people to work and help them make money and so forth. But part of what I came across was, I came to be convinced about, was that the way to do this is not by looking at things like personality tests and competency models, which are fairly. I've done a lot of research into this, and I have a book about this where I go into these things. But these are oftentimes pretty shoddy. The basis of some pretty shoddy research, or based on some pretty shoddy research, and not with the kinds of approaches or the results that we would want to call really meeting science. So it's not a question of trusting this stuff. It really does just come back to figuring out, even if it was all true, if your people don't understand what they're there for, they cannot succeed, and nobody wants to be in a job where they can't succeed. So really, it's not a question of relying on these things. It's really about doing the hard thinking about what you're there for, and helping people make that happen. And anyway, yeah, that's very passionately what I've become convinced of, and that's what my book's all about. So
that's awesome. So that's a great segue right here. Talk to us about, I know that there are leaders that want to dive into this on a deeper level, right? And so talk to us about, how can we get in contact with you? And then also, how can we find out more from you when it comes to value-centric leadership?
Sure. Well, you can please reach out to me on my website, which is www.argoshr.com,
Mhm,
argoshr.com. And if
mhm,
you're really interested in why do I think the way I do, and what do we what does value centric look like in terms of a programmatic way of implementing it, you can by all means please go on out to Amazon and get a copy of my book, which is called It's All in Your Head. And the subtitle is
mhm.
Why Psychology Doesn't Help Your Employees Deliver Value and What Can.
Wow.
It's very well reviewed on Amazon at the moment. It's all 5-star stuff, which is really nice. So, a lot of people are telling me it's a good book. And so would love to have you take a look at it. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a review,
Mhm.
please feel free. An honest review would be always welcome. So that's
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Barry. Transformation Station, we definitely want to support Barry. So you see the link here on the screen. It's also in the description box. Please go ahead and contact him. Look at the resources. We also want to invite you to go to Amazon and support the book. It's all in your head. It's all in the
yep,
head.
it's all in your head. Yep.
It's all in your head. All right, by
Yeah.
Barry Wolfe. Go and grab some copies. And as he said, we need you to leave reviews. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to invite all of our listeners and viewers to contact Barry. Let him know that you saw this episode, you listened to this episode. Let him know what resonated with you. Ask questions, because the community that learns together grows together. Barry, it's been wonderful to have you here and to talk about value-centric leadership. Thank you so much for joining us here on Transformation Station today.
My pleasure, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Well, listen, there you have it. Another great conversation. We talked about the fact that value-centric leadership starts with one step. Today, I want you to take a moment to name the values that drive your leadership. Write it down. Let them guide your next decision, your next conversation, your next opportunity. And definitely listen, if today's episode resonated with you, I'm going to invite you to hit follow and subscribe, tag a fellow leader, and keep the conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a Monday or Wednesday podcast. So until next time, keep showing up with integrity, because the world needs more leaders just like you.